This one's been a long time coming for Nintendo fans, and I know there's a lot of hostility and some anger out there about how Yooka-Laylee was originally going to come to the Wii U and then got swapped over to Switch and then was delayed a few times in there. But I'm not talking about that in this review because I'm reviewing the game. That's a whole different discussion to have. I'm just focusing on the game itself, Yooka-Laylee, which I've held off on playing on other platforms because I wanted to go the Nintendo route. So I'm giving you impressions from only the Switch version. I gotta tell you, I was really nervous about the Switch version of Yooka-Laylee because I remember when it came out on Xbox One and PS4, and there were a lot of complaints about frame rate and stuttering issues, especially on the Xbox One version. And I was like, man, if those systems can't handle the game, how in the world is the Switch going to be able to do it? But as far as I know, Playtonic and Team 17 took this game in-house, so they were directly working on it. And yes, there were delays, but they said, we want to make sure this version of Yooka-Laylee is as good as it can possibly be for the Switch. And honest to God, the game plays really well. Like, there are very slight hiccups. And they only happen a few times, like really nitpicking here if I'm pointing that stuff out. I'm shocked at how well the game runs. I wouldn't consider the frame rate an issue at all. And I thought going into it this was going to be a big complaint of mine, but it's not. So at least in that regard, it goes to show that Yooka-Laylee was worth the wait because all this extra time they put into it made for a better experience on Switch. The most important thing I can say in this review is if you miss the days of Banjo Kazooie, those type of 3D platformers, you're going to be absolutely in love with Yooka-Laylee. This game feels like it was ripped from that era. They took it out, like they spruced up the graphics and the audio considerably, and they released it today. I mean, it's like a carbon copy of Banjo Kazooie, which makes perfect sense because a lot of the developers at Playtonic worked on Banjo Kazooie or were part of Rare, so they were, you know, the big ones behind those 3D platformers of that era. So they know that people miss that type of game, and they set out to do that here. And there are a couple minor tweaks, but by and large, this is an updated graphical and visual experience very much akin to Banjo Kazooie. I'm going to apologize now for all the times I talk about Banjo Kazooie in this review because I think it's absolutely impossible not to talk about it when you're talking about Yooka-Laylee because, like I said, all the same gameplay beats are there. You're a duo and you run and you jump and you explore these big worlds and you collect feathers and you collect pages and you collect new moves and you unlock new portions of levels and you do transformations and you talk to characters that have that same gibberish speak that they had in Banjo Kazooie. Like, it is the same thing, and I really don't think that's a bad thing at all because it has been so long since we've seen that. You know, if we had a whole bunch of games that continued like that, or a whole bunch more Banjo Kazooie games, and we were at, you know, Banjo Kazooie 9 and they were still doing the same thing now, I'd be like, Yooka-Laylee really needs to do something different here. But Yooka-Laylee is continuing on the spirit of Banjo Kazooie, and I think after all this time, that's what people wanted. Like, if there's going to be a Yooka-Laylee 2, then it's time to innovate a bit more. But this was about, hey, we know you guys missed that type of game, we want to bring that era back today, and Yooka-Laylee definitely succeeds in that. It's going to be interesting to see how Switch owners react to Yooka-Laylee, because for those that played Banjo Kazooie, I would imagine they're really going to like this. But this game is very much a relic of a bygone era. It's a collectathon, and a lot of people got turned off to that like in the late days of the N64. So obviously, some of those people are looking to revisit that type of experience, and that's what this is. But for people who don't have that nostalgia for Banjo Kazooie or some other similar platformers, they might get really tired of collecting stuff. Like I said, you collect feathers and you unlock new moves, and there's ghosts for you to collect, and there's the main collectible is pages, and you need pages to open up new hub worlds and to expand upon the worlds that you're in. So there is definitely a lot of collecting, and you know, for me, someone who's a fan of those games from the N64 days, I like the exploration and the hunting around and, you know, checking every nook and cranny to find a feather over here or a ghost over there, whatever it may be. I like doing that stuff, but I can definitely understand how gamers who didn't play those earlier games would come into this and be like, what the hell is this? It's just a bunch of garbage strewn throughout the level. So, like I said, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Switch owners react to the game. Now, obviously, not all the collecting is necessary, but yes, you will have to collect things to progress in a game. Like I said, you have to unlock some new moves, and sometimes you need these moves to gain access to areas to progress the story. And then you'll also have to get pages that will open up new areas in the hub world, and if you want to get to the end of the game, you have to open up these new areas. And the game will tell you right off the bat, you can open them up however you want, and you can spend these pages however you want. So worlds will open up when you spend pages, but worlds will also expand when you spend pages. So when you collect a certain amount, you can exit a world and go to this book platform, and it'll say, like, do you want to spend more pages to make the world bigger? You say yes, and then the level that you just explored gets a lot bigger with all new places to run around and all new things to get and all new things to see. So there's certainly plenty to do, and like I said, when you mix that in with the collecting, it might be a little overwhelming for some people, but if you are totally against collecting in games, then this might not be the one for you, because you have to do some of it just to make your way through the game. I found the levels to be really fun to explore, and the way I play games is when it gives you the option to expand a world, I usually expand it before I move on. So I spend a lot of time in a singular world before I move on to the next. And I loved the idea of, you know, seemingly exploring everything a level had to offer and then spending pages and having all new stuff to do. And you're going to go in there again when you add these pages in and see new stuff. There's going to be things that you can't do because you haven't gotten access to a power-up that you need. So you will have to spend more pages to progress in other worlds, which will let you buy new things, and then you can go back to these previous worlds and collect some of the items you couldn't get before. So there is some backtracking, and obviously if you're going for 100% completion, there's going to be a lot of backtracking. But thankfully, the worlds are a lot of fun to walk around in. I mean, that's what these type of 3D platformers are about. Big open spaces where you just wander around. You're like, oh, I wonder what's behind this thing, or what's up on the top of this hill. And you get to do that like twice over, because when you expand the levels, you get to see so much more that wasn't there. So when you run through a level the first time, you'll get to like a cliff and there won't be anything there. And you're like, I wonder why the game made me walk over here. There's nothing going on. Then when you expand, a whole new mountain pops up and you're like, oh, now I get it. And it's a brand new challenge over there. So the themes of the worlds and the idea of expanding upon them and giving you brand new things to revisit, I really liked. I found it really enjoyable. Outside of collecting, the main mechanic here is platforming, so lots of running and jumping and doing certain moves to reach areas. And again, if you played Banjo Kazooie, you know exactly what you're getting into. The controls feel great, the moves are a lot of fun to do. It's interesting to try and figure out how you have to reach a platform, what you need to get there, or maybe some other like string of moves that you could like use to cheese your way to a platform that you shouldn't be at yet, which is what I did in Banjo Kazooie, and I did it in Yooka-Laylee as well. But I like that kind of stuff, and the camera does a well enough job, just like it did in Banjo Kazooie, but it's not without its hiccups. You know, sometimes it'll get hung up on something, or sometimes it might freak out in a tiny space. But these instances were very few and far between, and they didn't bother me as well. And my understanding is, since the update, there's a new way to control the camera. So there's two options there. I guess there is a more classic style camera, and then a camera that's more akin to what we use today. So I don't even remember what option I used, but I didn't have any problems with it. But that's because I played all those classic 3D platformers, so again, newcomers might feel that the camera is a bit rigid and a bit wonky. Not that we don't see new games today come out and have those issues, but, you know, I guess it's traps of the genre. Not that Nintendo hasn't done their own thing with cameras and their 3D platformers, but for better or worse, this really does feel like a Banjo-Kazooie experience. If we're talking about the nostalgia aspect of Yooka-Laylee, it's all the way down to the core of this game. I mean, even when you bring up the musicians, which are Grant Kirkhope, David Wise, and I think to a lesser extent Steve Burke, it sounds like a Banjo-Kazooie game. It sounds like they took pretty much the same music that was in Banjo-Kazooie and tweaked it a little bit. It's very familiar sounding, and a lot of the same tropes are in there. But I like both of those composers, and I've heard enough of their work that I can listen to a song and be like, oh, Grant Kirkhope did this song. Or, you know, you do a minecart challenge, and you're like, yes, this is definitely David Wise. Especially if you played something like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which he did a fantastic soundtrack for, but you just know his style. And these two composers, or those two specifically, Grant Kirkhope and David Wise, their music fits in with these type of games. I mean, it feels right. It's not really anything you'd hear in another type of game. Like I said, David Wise's work and Grant Kirkhope's work in other titles is familiar, but this is the right type of vibe for Yooka-Laylee, and it's enjoyable. It's bouncy, it's a little bit silly, it's mysterious, it's fun, it fits. And then on top of that, you get the writing style, which feels like a cross between Banjo Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day. Banjo Kazooie certainly had its jokes with innuendo in it, but I feel like there's more of that here. I mean, one of the guys is a trouser snake, after all. But, you know, the humor has that English feel to it, because these guys are from England. And, you know, it's funny. It's silly, stupid stuff, and I appreciate it. I think it fits in nicely. So, the entire package, everything, every single corner of this game, every single aspect, for better or worse, like I said earlier, feels like Banjo Kazooie. And for some people that might feel dated, and for some people they might be like, yes, I haven't had this feeling in so long. No other games have given me like this feeling since those original releases. I know Yooka-Laylee got a lot of crap when it first came out. I read some of the reviews, and there were some not-so-favorable ones in there. And I know there was some negative reaction from Kickstarter backers as well. And I don't know how much of that comes from people being legitimately disappointed in the game, or if those people were upset with the technical issues, which I've already discussed, and they were certainly there on day one. So I was not expecting to like the game too much, because I was getting the impression that it was going to be like a Banjo Kazooie tribute act. It was gonna try and like bring back those days, and it was just gonna feel off. But for me, I've really enjoyed it. I feel like it nails that type of game. It definitely takes me back to those days of Banjo Kazooie in the N64, and I feel like Playtonic really knew what they were doing, because I had a lot of fun here. Obviously, like I said, games have changed a lot since then, so there are some things that people may take issue with and think the team should have like tweaked it, but I honestly believe they were going for an experience as close to those original 3D platformers as they could, while sprucing up the visuals and the audio and stuff like that. So I had a blast. Like I liked it way more than I was expecting to. I was kind of negative going into it, just based on the wave of impressions that I saw online from the other versions. But yeah, I definitely enjoy it. And as I said earlier, I think the delays and the extra work that they put into it really paid off. So if you are into those 3D platformers, or if you miss those days, I definitely recommend Yooka-Laylee. I think it's a wonderful experience, and I think it really does a great job of bringing you back to what the 3D platformer used to be. And I still find that fun. Hey guys, RMC here from Go Nintendo. If you like what you saw in the video, why don't you give us a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe? We'd love to have you. If you want to see what else we're up to, you can check out GoNintendo.com for 24-hour Nintendo news. You can visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/GoNintendo. You can check us out on Twitter at twitter.com/GoNintendoTweet. And we're even over on Instagram at instagram.com/GoNintendo. I put all the links in the description just to make it easier for you guys to follow. Thanks a lot.